Hello guys, and you're welcome. So I just built this character using a sprite and exported this, and I felt it would be nice to create a character controller in the Godot engine, and I'll show you how you can do that. So in case you have your own piece of art or you don't have any piece of art, you can go to h.io to get any piece of art, or you can use the default Godot icon. This is going to work well, but just in case you're using a sprite, it's me, you can export this project and go to export as and save it as a name. So I called it misco.png. So what I'm going to do next is to open up Godot. So I'll just scroll over here and click on Godot to have that program super running. And it's open up, that's super fast. And let's create a new project. So I'll click on the new project and I'll call this the character controller, like so. And I'll just write Misco, that's the name of the guy. And I'm going to create this folder. Now it wants to put this in the documents folder. I have a special folder where I have my Godot projects. So I'll just put it into Godot projects and click on the Godot projects. Here we go. Where are you? I'll just look for or type G. And I'll just put it in this location right here. So it's a Godot project. Sorry, I accidentally went into the folder. So it's in my Godot projects folder, and this is the character controller Misco. I'll just create this in that folder and click create and edit. And this way we're going to start with this project we have right here. All right, so the first thing we want to do when we open up a project is just to create a character controller node. And basically we'll use a character body 2D. Now it's actually a very good node because it allows whatever object we have, like our player, to interact with the collisions without interfering with the default physics objects, such as things like gravity or drag. And to do that, let's just go to other node and let's just type in for character body 2D. And that's what we're going to use right here. So we can actually see a little warning right here. Let's see what that warning says. It says it has no shape, so it can't collide or interact with other objects, which is quite true. But before we begin to add the shape, it's important for us to bring in our player artwork into the Godot engine so we can organize things. And to do that, I like keeping everything organized. So I'm going to pass this into this resources folder and create a new folder. So like I said, in case you want to use this piece of art, you can use the SVG icon. Let me just show you what I mean. So I'm going to add a child node, and this is going to be a sprite 2D. And basically this is just an object that will let us visually see our art. So let's go over it. If I drag this icon.svg into the texture slot, we can actually see the texture right here. But I don't want to use this texture because I have my own character. So the first thing I'll do is to create a folder. So I'll go to create new folder and I'll create this art folder like so, and I'll just minimize this view. Head over to my documents and go to where I have my documents. I'll just go here and I'll go to art packs, and I called it Misco, and so here's Misco. This is the PNG one. I'll just drag it into this section here. And once Misco is there, I'll just drag this, it's in the art folder, cool. So I'll just drag Misco up to the texture input and we can actually see Misco, but he's quite blurry at the moment. So to fix this, let's go to project and project settings, and just right here where it says textures on the rendering, I'm going to set this from linear to nearest. This will give us a nice pixel art feel. Also, if we look at our character, our player right now, he's quite kind of like offset right here, and I don't really want that. So I can just go over here to the transform and drag the, not the Y scale, sorry. I'll just drag our guy up like so. I'll just hold and just drag, and just a little bit more because I want his feet to just be at the bottom right here. Like so, to the origin. Yeah, I think it's not really super bad, but I'll just place him right here it doesn't really matter. We can always change this anyway. So now that we've created the sprite 2D and we can see the character, let's go ahead and create the collision for this. So to do that, let's also add another child node to this character body 2D node. And let's just call that, let's search for collision shape 2D and hit the return key. Now we haven't created the shape yet. So over here on the inspector, let's click this empty, and where we have the new circle shape, I'm just going to click on new circle shape, and we can see that's super small. So to edit this properties, let's go over to the circle shape like so, and click on circle shape 2D. Now that we have this here, we can start doing things like dragging the radius, or we can just do it directly from here. So I'll just drag this to make this slightly big, and I'll use this gizmo right here. Click on this move or press W for the shortcut and just drag this and make sure it's here. So it's not really in a bad spot, but I'll just give the player some slight allowance for the collision in case the player interacts with the walls. And we could just drag this up just a little bit like so. I think I'll just leave it like that. It's not a problem. So we can easily see that we've composed our character. We started with a character body 2D, and then we added a sprite 2D so we can visually see our art. And then we added a collision shape, and this collision shape is what's going to interact with the world, is going to interact with things like the tile map. And what we also need to do is to save our scene. And before we could do that, let's rename this character body 2D into something more recognizable like player. So now that I have that, let's go ahead and save our scene, because right here it says unsaved. So let's go ahead and press Ctrl S to save that. Before I save this player.tscn scene, I want to create a folder and call this folder scenes. And right here in this scenes folder, that's where I'm going to save my scenes. Now, the next thing we want to do is to actually create a script that will allow us to control our player. With a script, we can do things like access our player's X and Y position, just as we've seen here in the transform. And then what we can do from there is actually to be able to move our character from left to right. For instance, if I just hold the x-axis and drag this to the left or right, you can actually see we're moving this character. I'll just set everything to 0 and 0 to just reset our player to the origin. So to attach a script, I'll just click on this plus icon, and it wants to place this here. I'll just create a new folder. So I'll just do this, right here. And I'll go up one level and I'll create a new folder. I'll call that my scripts, because I want to have all the scripts in that folder, and click OK. And next, I'm just going to click open. And in case this template is checked, you can uncheck the template, or else it's going to create a default script for you. And I just want to create this on my own. So right now we can see that we have a script, and it's actually switched over to the script view. If you want to get back to the 2D view, all you need to do is to click on 2D and you'll be back on the 2D view. Now, the way we can control this character is to use an input system, basically a way to get the input from the player through the player's keyboard, mouse, or the controller. For this tutorial, I'm going to be using the keyboard controller to control this character, and let's go ahead and see how we can set that up. So I'll quickly press save and go to project. And here I'm going to click on project settings, and the next tab after the general tab is the input map. So let's go ahead and see what's happening. The input map has a lot of inputs built in already. If I click on this, we can see all these inputs. The UI underscore left is going to use a UI left event, a joypad, and a joypad event like so. But I'll just close that, and I can show you that you can create your own custom user inputs. And let's go ahead and see how we can do that. So under this add new action, what I'm going to do is to type the name of the action. So first I'm going to say user underscore left. I'm going to click on the add action, and next I'm going to add another action for user underscore right. I can press the return key and then add the next action, the user underscore up. and another action called user underscore down. You can name these actions any names you want, but it's good to name them, give them a proper variable name where you can easily reference and have access to them later on. So next, what I'm going to do is to click on this plus icon here for the user underscore left, and this is going to listen for an input. And basically, when I press the left arrow key on my system and press OK, we can actually see now we have the left physical key or the left keyboard, and we're going to be using that as the keyboard event. I'll add another one, which is the A key, and press OK. Now what this means is we can press left and we can also use the A key. Basically, I'm trying to do the WASD for up, left, down, and right, and at the same time using the arrow keys. So let's do that for the right. So let's click this plus right here, hit the right arrow key, click OK, hit plus again, press the D, and hit OK. And next, under user underscore up, I'm going to press the up arrow key, press OK, click it again, press the W key, and click OK. And finally, for down, let's click the plus symbol, press the down arrow, click OK, and hit the plus symbol again, and press the S button, and hit OK. And basically, we're done configuring our inputs. Now what we need to do is to see how we can access these inputs from our script. Doing so is going to give us a very efficient way of communicating in our game, and we're not going to have any problems. So let's just jump into our script view like so. If you want to work in a distraction-free mode, you can do Ctrl-Shift F11, or you can just press this icon right here that takes you away from the full screen to a full view. I just like having it right here. So what does extends character body 2D mean? Well, we attach the script to the character body 2D, so it's inheriting all the properties the character 2D have. If we look at the inspector, all these motion mode, up direction, the collision, the transform, the position, it means this script is inheriting from it, and we can access that to change the player properties. And also those events we created for the keyboard input, we could call those events using the input method, which is what we're going to do right now. So the first thing I like to do is to define a speed that our player is going to be moving. And I've kind of like tested out a value for this. So first, to create this variable, I'm going to use the const keyword because this is a value I don't want to change when the program is running. And I'm going to call that speedo. And I'll set that to be a float. Oops, I turned this to lower key. And I'll set that to a value of 250. So basically we have a constant called speed, which is a float, and it's going to use a value of 250 to determine how fast our player is going to be moving. So next, what I'm going to do is to create a function that is going to handle our horizontal and vertical movement, because we want to do a kind of like top-down game where we can move left, right, up, and down. So to create a function, I'm going to use the keyword func. I'm going to say player underscore move underscore vector. And with this, I'll create a variable to hold a reference to our input. Basically, we want to determine if we're pressing the left and the right arrow key, it's going to return a value, and we're going to use that value to determine the direction our player is facing, and we can move that by multiplying our velocity with our speed. And all that might sound complex, but truly it's not. And let's go ahead and code, and I'll show you what all that means. So first I'm going to say var, and I'll call this horizontal underscore movement, and this is going to be equal to our input dot, and I'm going to use a function called the get action strength. So I'm just going to say get underscore action, and it's the second one, so I'm going to press down and hit the return key. And remember, we actually created our variables, so if we've forgotten what we call them, you can quickly go over to your project settings and go to your input map, and remember that we call this user left, user right, user up, and user down. So I'll just go ahead and close that. So here I'm going to type in our user underscore right. And what I'm going to do is to subtract this from our input dot get action strength. Again, is the second one from our user underscore left. So what am I doing here and why am I doing this? Well, our get action strength is a built-in function in Godot. If you hold down Control and mouse over this and click on this, it's going to open the default built-in help. And it will actually tell you that the get action strength is a float property. That's why I declared the speed property to be a float. And so it's going to return a value between 0 and 1, representing the intensity of the given action. So for a joypad or a joystick, this value is going to be a float representation. Basically, you'll actually have this value depending on how far you've pushed your joystick. But since we're using our keyboard input, we're going to get 1 or 0. So if we are not pressing the key, we'll get 0. If we're pressing the key, we'll get 1. So basically what I'm doing right here, I am saying that if I'm pressing the right arrow key, I'm going to get a value of 1, but I'm not pressing the left arrow key and this is going to be 0. So eventually my horizontal movement is going to be 1 and this will be in the positive x-axis. And now what I'm actually seeing over here is when I press the left key, my right input is going to be 0 and 0 minus 1 is going to be -1. So my horizontal movement is going to be -1 on the horizontal x-axis. So that's why I'm using this shorthand. We can do the same thing with our vertical movement. And basically what I'm going to do is the cheat and copy this entire line. And let's just go ahead and paste that. So I'm going to call this my vertical movement. So instead of horizontal, I'll call this vertical. And if you guessed right, if you guessed what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to use the up and my down movement just to subtract this one. So I'm going to use my user underscore down here. And then here, I'm going to use my user underscore up. So this is going to be for the y-axis, vertically the up. And if I go back here, it's going to use the y-axis. That's the user underscore up and user underscore down. And this is going to be our user underscore left and user underscore right when we press that on our keyboard. So let's go ahead and jump into the script and continue working on this. So now that I have this in my process function, our process function is going to be running on every frame. So what I actually want to do is to continuously check for our player movement within our process or update function. And to create that function, I'm going to say func underscore process delta. And this is a built-in function in Godot. The process function is a built-in function. It's not a custom function, and it accepts a delta. Delta is the difference between your last frames. So basically, if you have 2 frames, the last one minus the first frame, and it's not a constant value. You use the delta, and the delta is important because it allows you to maintain a consistent frame rate across different systems. So just so you're fair to the player and you don't have any player playing the game too fast or playing the game too slow based on their system. This is going to help everything balance out. So I'll create a variable, and I'm going to use that variable to get access to my function right here. And also what I like to do is to return this value we have right here. So if I'm going to get my horizontal and vertical movement, it'll be nice to be able to return that value such that when I call this function, it knows it's going to have a x and a y value. So I'm just going to say return, and I'm going to use a vector2, which is a data type that is used to provide simultaneous values. So I'm going to pass in my horizontal movement and then the vertical movement right here. And I think it's going to be okay in that way. So next, I can now have access to my variable. And to do that, I'm going to have create a variable to access this function within my object so that I don't have to type all these all the time. So I'll just use the var keyword and I'll call that variable my player underscore movement underscore vector. And this is going to be equal to our function, which is our player underscore move underscore vector. So this is the function. So now that we are accessing our function, what we want to do is to create a variable for our direction, and then we'll normalize this vector. So what does normalization mean? Basically, if you're moving on the left and right axes, if you decide to move in a diagonal direction like this, your player is going to be moving faster because the length of this player's vector needs to be normalized to 1. It's not normalized. If it's not normalized, it's going to be moving faster than it's moving x and y because it's going to do what is called a resultance for the x and y axis. Now, this is some physics stuff, but just know that you need to normalize your movement, especially when you're moving in 2 directions. And to normalize it simply means to make that vector's magnitude to be equal to 1. We don't really need to bother ourselves about it so much because Godot has created a function, a built-in function that allows us to do this. So next, what I'm going to do is to say our var player underscore direction is going to be equal to our player movement vector, like so. And I'm just going to normalize this guy. So I'll just say normalized, and that should actually work. If you type in normalized with an S, you're going to get an error. So just be wary about that. It's happened to me in the past and I didn't realize why that was having a problem. And the next thing we're going to do is to get the velocity. Now, velocity is a built-in function from the character body 2D. If I hold Control again and click on velocity, it's going to open up this and it's going to tell us the current, it's the current velocity vector in pixels per second used to modify calls to move and slide. And basically these are all functions and properties that exist from the character body 2D class. So we're not building this, it's just something that exists and we're taking advantage of it. So next we're going to take our player direction, which is going to determine which side our player is facing, and then we're going to multiply that by our speedo, which determines how fast our player is going to be changing that direction based on its velocity. And then finally, what we're going to do is to call the move and slide function. Now, the function of the move and slide is quite important because it will actually use the velocity and it will help you have a very smooth collision. And it's actually one of the best names I've heard from a function so far. So I'm just going to say move and slide like so and just call this guy. So now that let's save this and let's try running this script, this scene right here. So we haven't determined our main scene yet. So let's go ahead and attempt playing. So if I click this to play our scene, it's going to tell us no main scene has been defined. Select one. And I'm going to actually close the scene and create a main scene because Godot allows you to nest or group or have a scene composition structure. So to do that, I'll click on new scene, and here I'm just going to double click and I'm just going to call this our main scene. And let's save our main scene. We're in our scenes folder and I'll just save this as the main scene. And what I'm going to do is to instantiate a child node of the player in this main scene. So we can actually see our player right here in the main scene, and our player exists independently, but we have a scene where we can do things like create our level, add our backgrounds, and do all that. So let's go ahead and quickly save that. So we've saved our main scene. Let's go ahead and play this and click on select current scene, which is the main scene. So this is the scene that's going to be running each time we run Godot. And I'm just trying to move this. We can actually see this is moving, but we have a problem because our character is not moving down. So let's see what the issue is. So I can see my debugger right here, and it's actually telling me the input map action user underscore down doesn't exist. Did you mean user underscore down? Right? So we typed in user underscore down. So it's not recognizing this one. This is where we have the problem here. So I have user underscore down, but do I have user underscore up? So again, let's quickly go and see what we did in our input map. So we have user underscore up, we have user underscore down, right? And we're using the down and up keys. So user underscore up, user underscore down. And we make sure we're spelling that right. So let's get back to our click and close this. So guys, so apparently after checking my script, there was absolutely nothing wrong with the code. So basically, sometimes when that happens with Godot, all you need to do is to restart the program and it should have fixed all those errors. So basically, that's what I did. All I did was just to restart the program, and after I restarted the program, that bug went away. So again, it wasn't our issue. You might have actually followed me along step by step and realized you didn't have that issue. I did have the issue, so I went back to my input and changed the names back to the user underscore up and user underscore down, and it was fine. And also, you might notice some weird lines when you're actually typing in or imputing these events. There's some weird vertical lines, so I don't know what's up with that. That's super weird, but I just wanted to do that. And also, for the under the general, I changed the window size to 1280 to by 720 because 1920 by 1080 was just too wide for me. If I let me just show you what it does right now. So if I play the scene, so I'll just go ahead and play this, and I can move left, right, down, and up. I only have one warning, and I'll actually show you how to get rid of that warning. So I'm actually moving here. I can expose this character. I can do at export const float this value, and it can expose this, but I'll just leave it like that. Don't want any problems. So I'll just set this value here, and basically if I set it back to this value, if I try 1920 by 1080, my resolution isn't really super large. It actually is going to fill up the entire screen, and kind of like getting rid of that, you don't have that little way to get rid of that screen. So it's going to make the thing exactly stuck right here, and I don't want that. Right, so that's why I just changed it to 1080 by 720. So I'll just go back there and do 1280 by 720, and let's just get out of advanced settings. So next, if you actually play it, you should actually have a nice maximized window where you can easily close this, and you can always set your speed to any value you want. So thank you very much for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next tutorial. Peace.